Okay, we're listening to a track from a recording called Satori, and that is Tom Brennan. Nice drifty space music there. And you will tune to 90.3 WZBC in Newton. Victor Robert Venckus here, and it is now time for Expanding Awareness, on which I often most likely do interviews regarding the paranormal. I might feature aspects of holistic health, and from time to time we cover animal rights and progressive ideas and such. And with us live in studio is Andrew Carmen Bailey and Connie Baxter Marlow. They are visionary filmmakers, futurists, and social philosophers who envision a positive future for humanity. They come from divergent life experiences and have reached similar conclusions. The prevailing paradigm is missing important information about the nature of reality. They challenge a number of basic assumptions which have driven humanity's behavior for millennia, and we will discuss what that is. And they also speak from a reality in which the following assumptions are absolute. We live in an infinitely conscious, loving, interconnected, and abundant universe where free will and the power of consciousness create the life we experience. And they also have a book out called The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. And we will be speaking about that. And their book and workshop, The Trust Frequency, distills their worldview into a framework which one can live a life in alignment with universal truths and one's inner knowing. They are currently completing a decade-long research project which pulls together the trust frequency concepts in an inspiring documentary, film, screenplay, and book, The First 50 Years, Freedom and Friendship at Plymouth Plantation, which brings honor to the Mayflower Pilgrims and Wampanoag Indian for their role in the evolution of democracy in the American mind and spirit. And so I welcome you both to the program.
Great to be back, Victor.
Okay.
Yeah, good morning.
All right. Let's talk about what you actually mean by the trust frequency. And I guess we can outline the 10 assumptions for a new paradigm, which is the name of your book.
So the trust frequency, in simple terms, it's a state of consciousness. It's a place we can both aspire to and we can get to if we're operating on the appropriate operating system. Current humanity is operating on a basically fear-based set of beliefs and assumptions. And we took these on as little children before we ever, reached the analytical phase where we could actually consider something and say, do I believe this? Do I want to believe this? We took a lot of stuff on. And current society, which definitely looks like a mess when you look out there, is operating.
Oh, really?
You haven't noticed. Oh, I see. No, seriously, read the newspaper.
Yes, indeed.
Exactly. And, our thesis is that we can change that. We can change it individually. Now, how you change 7 billion people one at a time is challenging, but all I can change is myself. And I can change my personal assumptions. And that's what we're offering, these 10 assumptions, these 10 kind of fundamental beliefs that if we take them on, it changes everything.
All right. Assumption 1.
Assumption 1 is it's the total opposite of what we were all taught in school about the nature of the universe. We were taught, or I was taught, I'm a scientist by training, I was taught that the universe is this great sort of clockwork machine. It's absolutely amazing, but it's not alive, it's not conscious, it doesn't know we exist, and it obeys the laws of Newtonian mechanics and so on. However, what if it's more like the indigenous people believe it to be? What if it's a conscious, loving universe? What if it's a living biological entity? And that's my personal belief.
All right, assumption number 2.
Well, assumption number 2, assumption 1 is it's a conscious, loving universe. There is only love.
There's nothing but love.
There's nothing but love. And that brings up a paradox, because we look around and we see what's going on and we say, well, how can that be love? Mm-hmm. Well, it's known God is love. But that's a paradox, because if God were love, he wouldn't be doing this mess. Well, assumption number 2 resolves that paradox, because we don't understand the nature of that love. See, that's our big misunderstanding. We don't understand how loved we are by the unconditional love of the universe, meaning that it gives us everything we ask for. So our beliefs are our requests to the universe. We have 7 A's that break down our consciousness into 7 A's. We call it, they all begin
7
with,
words beginning with the letter A, right?
Yeah, the 7 words that we can check out as to how we believe, what our assumptions are, what our alignment is, what we're aligned with, what our attitude is, what our attention, where we're putting our attention.
Our awareness.
And our awareness, and then our action. Where do we act from? And then our allowing. Do we allow this conscious, loving universe to show up for us? Step back and let this universe show up for us. So it's really the antithetical.
Trust it to do that. That's really what the trust frequency is. It's trusting ourselves and this vast entity, the universe.
Yes.
All right. All right. Talk to us about the duality, okay? I mean, people are cutting each other's heads off, shooting hundreds of people at a time. Where is the loving universe in that?
Here's where it is. Those people who are doing that are behaving, their behavior is based on their belief systems. Would you agree? Right.
Yeah, sure.
So they have this belief system. And to me personally, some of these beliefs look absurd, but they believe them with a sufficient passion. They're willing to die for these beliefs that look absurd to me. But it's, I cannot change them. I can't be in charge of them. They are presumably doing the best they can with the deck they've been handed. The deck they've been handed, from my perspective, is defective. They're running on a fundamentally erroneous operating system, and it's about time for humanity to wake up and stop behaving that way. These behaviors we see are an inevitable result of the beliefs that they're operating on.
And it's all of us, because we've all created this world, and we've all taken on a set of beliefs that now quantum science is actually disproving. There's been a move since Einstein into a form of science that's actually proving that we are interconnected. We are one consciousness, and that what we think does matter. This is cutting edge science at this point, and it's very hard to get the Titanic to turn and move in the direction that science is actually proving. But once we understand that and take that on, that we are one consciousness, we are one people, it is an abundant universe, and we don't have to fight over scarce resources, because what we're saying is that in the higher frequencies, okay, that everything is a frequency, and we happen to be in a basically a fear frequency, and there are certain laws in this frequency. And we're saying that in the higher frequencies, there's another set of laws. It's an abundant universe. Once we move into a higher way of seeing and way of knowing, we're going to move into another reality. We create our reality with our thinking.
All right. Now, most people, especially in this economy, are struggling with finances and places to live and stuff. Is it all really like thought visualization to make changes, or are there circumstances now that didn't exist years and years ago?
You know, the way we respond to these outer circumstances, that's another area in which we have freedom of choice. Connie and I don't have much. We live on the road in our van. We love our life. We don't have money. We don't have those kinds of resources, and yet our attitude is such that we absolutely love every minute of it. So it's a choice. You know, those of us who are attached to things perhaps we use, a lot of people lost a lot in the material world over this recent economic crash. and you can take that in a number of different ways, including accepting it for what it is.
But
there's a quote from Henry David Thoreau from the Conclusion to Walden that really expresses what it is we're talking about, and I think that does answer your question. Connie, can you tell us that quote?
Sure, I will in a sec, but really what's going on now, it wasn't okay before when we had comfort and money in our pocket. We were selling our kids down the river to a system that's killing us. You've got to admit, it was not okay before this crash, before we got thrown out in the streets and have no money and all that stuff. So what this circumstance is doing is breaking us loose from thinking that system was okay. Okay? Because it's not. It never has been. It's been out of balance. It's just like a little red wagon that's wheels were improperly put on, and we were rolling our wagon along, and the wagon was going fine, and then the wheels started wobbling. And they started wobbling a little more, and now the wheels are off because they were never put on it right in the first place. That's what we're getting at, is these core assumptions are erroneous as to the nature of the universe. So we, in our assumptions, our economic system is based on the concept of scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
I have an economics major, okay? It's the problem of scarcity, okay? In this frequency, there is scarcity. Okay, in higher frequencies, there isn't scarcity. When Jesus brought down the loaves and the fishes and fed the multitudes and had 40 bushel baskets left over, you see, he was reaching into another frequency, into the dark matter, we call it at this point, to bring forth abundance we can't even fathom. So we're operating on in this whole frequency, on this concept of scarcity, and so this conscious, loving universe has to show up and bring us scarcity. And that's where war comes from, is from the idea of scarcity and the idea that we're separate from the other. So we have to fight with the other to get stuff so we have power and control, and so our kids will survive. I mean, it's a whole flawed house of cards that the wheels are coming off, and it's a good thing because it's throwing us into trust. It's throwing us into understanding that things work out one way or the other. They may not work out the way we expect them to, but they work out. We actually get to know our somebody down the street or somebody we've never talked to before because we're all in this together now.
All right, what about, create your own reality. What about fate and free will? A psychic predicts events in the future and they happen. An astrologer predicts events in the future and they happen. So what is fated, and where does free will come into it if a person can't predict future events?
So that's precisely 2 of the 10 assumptions we present. One of our assumptions, I believe it's the 4th or the 5th, we say that free will is an absolute law of the universe. Free will. That sounds yet another paradox. We keep bringing up these paradoxes and we keep resolving them because, as in Connie's terminology, circumstance, outer circumstance is what guides us. So we think we're headed one way. I'm going to go to college and I'm going to do such and such, and I have a plan and I've laid out my life. Circumstance steps in and changes everything. So there's this kind of interesting balance between free will, circumstance, but it's not predetermined. Time itself is flexible. So if a psychic goes into the future and sees something, there is only now. It's another one of the assumptions. There's only this moment. There's nothing but this moment. Nobody's ever been able to identify 1 second in the past, 1 second in the future. So it's all present. And some people seem to have this ability to, look into what we think of as the future, but it's actually now.
And what we say is that circumstance actually loves us more than we do. Because we think we've been conditioned in this lower frequency to think that there's only certain results of certain actions and that we can only have this much because it's a scarce universe and we have to fight to get it and work hard and all that stuff. Those are the rules of the lower frequency. Okay, so we say, because one other way that we resolve the paradox that you talked about of free will and determinism, and that is that we say we define humanity as a collection of divine, autonomous, sovereign beings who choose to incarnate on earth with a purpose and a gift on the soul's journey to wholeness. Okay? So that's our overarching act of free will. We said, I'm going to planet Earth. I'm going to go on a journey. I have certain lessons to learn, certain things to experience so that I will move more fully into self-love, self-acceptance, and integration with all that is, the wholeness of all that is. So we come down, we incarnate into a family, into circumstances, into a war zone, into a famine place, whatever, into an abusive family, whatever it is, we have chosen that. It's all free will. We say absolutely. For this construct to change anybody's life, one has to take it as absolutely true. We're not saying it is absolutely true. We're saying take it on, see what it does to your thinking, what it does to your reality. Because I want to tell you, it sets you free.
It's very liberating, yeah. I still would like Connie to quote Thoreau on this subject, because it really is a summary of everything we're talking about, and it comes from 150 years ago from Henry David Thoreau.
Yeah, he says in his conclusion to Walden, I learned this, at least, by my experiment at Walden Pond, that when one walks confidently in the direction of his dreams, he will pass a certain boundary. He will experience a success unexpected in common hours. The laws that apply to him will be expanded, or new laws will be made in his favor, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Moving, having the free will to move our frequency, to walk in trust. Walk confidently in the direction of your dreams. You pass a certain boundary, and the world changes. Your reality changes, and you actually contribute to the collective consciousness because we're all connected.
Okay, I want to remind you that you're listening to Expanding Awareness, and this is Victor Robert Venckus, and with us live in studio is Andrew Carmen Bailey and Connie Baxter Marlow, authors of The Trust Frequency, 10 Assumptions for a New Paradigm. And if you want to give a call here, do so at 617-552-4686, 617-552-4686, and we could talk about changing the paradigm into something new and changing your thoughts, and we can discuss philosophy here on the program, and we're going to take this call now. Good morning, you're on there with Connie and Andrew.
Hi, Connie and Andrew. I've been listening to what you've been saying about the 10 assumptions.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, and I want to ask, what examples, or is there one great example that you can point to of where all these things worked in society now? Current society.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's a really challenging question for this reason. Society, as long as we can remember, has been operating on what I regard as a defective operating system. Until we actually accomplish the upgrade and change our minds, change the contents of our minds, which is simply our beliefs, our opinions, they turn out just to be opinions. A paradigm is simply a set of assumptions. An assumption is a belief we don't question. And this is something that changes very slowly over time. Historically, scientifically, for example, Einstein came in with a completely different take on reality. And 100 years later, we're beginning to understand the consequences of what he was talking about. So I am not certain that I can point any of us to a paradise where where life has actually been lived this way.
Well, weren't there small events in the 60s? I mean, wasn't there a consciousness change?
Okay, yeah, all right.
Society.
Andrew lived it, actually.
Yeah, I would say, you're pointing to the most
I think we're all part of that Woodstock
Yeah.
generation.
Okay. I'm with you there. You could say, okay, sorry, I was trying to find a human community that existed in some country. It was, whether it was the Bushmen of the Kalahari
Well,
or whether.
Even if it only lasted for 3 days in Woodstock in 1969.
Yeah, I'm with you.
August 15th, 16th, and 17th, we're celebrating next week. Was that an example of people following these assumptions, do you think?
Yeah. And you know why? Our book's called The Trust Frequency. And all of a sudden you had 500,000 people gathered together, tripping on psychedelics, etc., and trusting each other and trusting themselves. And everybody behaved pretty much impeccably for that entire period of time. That was extraordinary.
But also, there's like Findhorn over in Scotland.
Yeah,
I don't know if
right,
you've ever
okay.
heard of that, but those people worked with the angelic realms, the divas and stuff, and made vegetables that, these huge vegetables, and all this magical stuff happened on the sand. I mean, I want to tell you, the laws that apply in this frequency are only in this frequency. Okay, so we moved to a higher frequency. Those folks at Findhorn were operating in a higher frequency, and it looked like magic.
They were
Okay,
in touch
and
with the angelic.
Yeah, and you know certain individuals who seem to have a blessed life. Okay, the things just work for them, and money just flows to them. And there's another quote by, but that's attributed to Goethe, that I don't know if you're aware of this one, that says, "When one commits without hesitation, without the chance of turning back, Providence moves too, and one experiences all manner of unforeseen circumstances, material assistance, chance meetings that no man could have dreamt would have come his way." Okay? In the higher frequency, we can't even imagine what's there, but we have to walk into it.
All right, so if we wanted to recreate that experience, say, of the Woodstock Festival community, whatever you call it, that community of people that came together, how would you do it? Would you put on another festival? Would you follow that model? Or would it have to be something different?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to replicate an event like that. It's been tried a lot of times, and do you remember what happened with the Rolling Stones out in California with Altamont? A whole different event, different vibratory level, different drugs. People were just in a different space. They were in a different spiritual state. So I think the lesson so many people took away from Woodstock is that it is possible to live this way, and we ended up with all of these beautiful attempts at communes, communal living. A lot of people started going to India. People started living in ashrams. People really did begin to behave differently to others and to the world around them because their belief system, their fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality shifted back there in the 60s.
But also, I'll tell you something, this country was actually founded by people who had a vision for humanity. Our Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, everything is a vision of what we can be. And right on our coins it says, "In God we trust." Okay? We cannot get to what the United States founders dreamed of for humanity in this frequency. We have to move into a higher frequency, into trust, and it's remind us right there on the coins. And it all started with the Mayflower Pilgrims. This is the work we're doing right now, is the Mayflower Pilgrims and the Wampanoag Indians right there in Plymouth, Massachusetts for 50 years, kept a peace treaty and lived in peace and friendship and had an intercultural exchange that created the American mind and the American spirit and ultimately became this vision for humanity. And we're moving in that direction. Nobody's accomplished it yet. The great law of the Iroquois came forth into the Constitution, but nobody's lived it yet on the planet. It's up to us right now to do it.
All right, great. Well, keep up the good work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling.
Thanks a lot. That was a great
You can go to
question.
our website, thetrustfrequency.net, and send us an email, and we'll be in touch in the future, and check out our other work.
All right, great.
Hey,
Thanks for
a lot.
calling.
All right, the number again is 617-552-4686. Good morning, you're on the air with Andrew and Connie.
Hi there. Good morning. Hey, I've really enjoyed your what you guys have been saying, and you really expressed really well a lot of the ideas that I also have. And I wonder if you guys have ever read a book called The Economy of Cities by Jane Jacobs. And the reason I ask that is in the beginning she describes how basically city-based trade started. And it's a really interesting insight. It arose in some places, and there are other people who kept in the balance of living off the land, like, for example, the Native Americans, And so I think that a big part of what we're dealing with, that other and everything, I think a lot of that comes from living outside our bounds, with nature, and exploiting nature so that we can live out in a larger capacity. So I need to define that a little bit better, but then we would be living if we just lived in sort of hunter-gatherer balance with the earth.
Well, frankly, what's your name?
My name is Helena.
Hi, Helena. Frankly, we're going forward into a higher frequency. We call it the evolutionary upward spiral.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So going back to anything isn't in the cards. It's going forward into a something we can't even fathom.
I agree with you about that. But what it's just very interesting. I just recommend, for your own personal, just if you haven't read it, I'd really recommend it. Even if you just read the beginning, it's very interesting.
Thank you very much.
It's called The Economy of Cities?
Yes, by Jane Jacobs. It was written in 1965. It's very interesting.
Okay. No, I actually have not heard about that. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
That's really useful.
Thanks, Helena.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you so much for contributing. And let's take another call. Good morning. You're on the air. Hello?
Oh.
Yeah, you're going to have to turn down your computer or radio.
It's my radio. Hold on.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Even though we enjoy the psychedelic effect.
Right.
Sorry. Okay. So I'm really loving hearing what you folks are saying. There's a big part of me that really wants to sort of believe that, and I can even point to situations in my life, okay, and in the world. However, I am really reeling from, what's been going on, for example, in places like Gaza, where violence is people are being victimized, and then the perpetrators are being, touted as the victims, and then those kind of situations that just get under my skin, and the violence and the impunity of the people doing violence, and the people suffering. Okay, so anyway, in that context, okay, because there's a lot of emotion right now for me, in the suffering of people in the world, unjustified, whatever. And so part of me, when I hear what you're saying, is that people, in the ethers, we've chosen this life and we've chosen to take on these things. Well, I mean, and then I have in my head this image of, a father holding his daughter who has been blown to pieces by yet another new Israeli missile or bomb, just like this country we live in is doing the same. And I feel like there's a part of me that feels like, well, this is just claptrap, I mean, how can you say that to a father who's holding his dismembered child who's just been blown away by someone who consciously decided to do that? And saying, well, you kind of chose, this for your higher good. To me, part of me feels like that's just namby-pamby below.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is you cannot say that to that father. You simply cannot. When somebody's in that state, there's no way they can hear it and accept it. Only from a higher state of consciousness can that person ever get to that point of acceptance and understanding. It's very challenging. It really, really is. But all we can do as individuals is to elevate our personal vibratory level to where we're in a state of love and acceptance and understanding. Yeah. And because we're all interconnected, we actually influence those situations and those people.
Mm-hmm. And what's your name?
My name is Dottie.
Hi, Dottie.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that, because we're all connected now, the World Wide Web has connected us. So we know, we feel it when that boy that child gets killed. Okay? We see it. We know it. Everything is happening so that we will choose something else. Okay? Because before it used to happen and nobody knew about it. Before the rainforest was pretty much decimated, people were just decimating rainforests without thinking twice about it. Now, because there aren't many rainforests left, we think about it. We say, okay, this isn't working. Hey, guess what? This is not okay. I love that little boy who just got killed. I don't care what his nationality is. You see, the human heart, it's all serving. From this perspective, Dottie, everything serves the coming of peace on earth and heaven on earth. There is only love. And you know, the whole thing of God is love. Okay, how is that? You know, if there is a God, and if it's all powerful and all creative and all loving, how does all this happen? Well, that's how we've come to understand that something that makes sense. If there's only free will, there's only love, there's only the soul's journey to wholeness. We don't know another soul's journey. From our perspective, it looks horrific. It is horrific. It's not okay. But we don't know another soul's journey.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you, and in some ways, it just sort of, right now, in what I think we all have just witnessed, whatever we choose to focus on, you know, and I think about the Israel-Gaza situation because it was so blatant and so outrageous, and there was absolute, you know, from the U.S. general media and people, even, you know, just no action to stop this and prevent the violence. So I guess maybe, and I know I'm rambling here a little bit, I'm trying to say, so then, but the perpetrators, you know, there are people who are not in that consciousness at all. And unfortunately, a lot of them are running the world right now, capitalists, you know, running the world all over the world. And they're in a totally different frame of mind. It's out of scarcity, but they're taking, and they'll take from whoever they can. And most. Well,
listen, Dottie, hang on a sec. I'm sorry. Just understand that they are us, they are you, they are me. We are humanity, and we have a much higher potential that we can manifest if we choose to do so. But really, it's us, the humans. We have to feel responsible for each other. You can't point fingers.
Well,
Sorry.
Okay. I guess I have to say I disagree with that.
That's okay. We'll agree to disagree. Thank you.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just my concern is, you know, and this comes from my own personal suffering in my own family, you know, whatever. So it isn't like before the internet, you know, I saw that people who are creating violence, how do we stop those people? And you're saying I can change my consciousness. Yes, I meditate and I, you know, blah, 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 I do all these. And it helps, but there's still that, you know, I'm confronted in the world constantly, you know, with whatever, we humans doing terrible things, and I.
So where are you choosing to put your attention in your personal spiritual growth? That's what it comes down to. Really, that's the question.
Okay, thank you so much, Dottie.
Thanks, Dottie.
Thank you.
Good morning, you're on there.
Yes. One moment, turn off my radio.
Yeah.
My name is Lauren. I'm calling from Somerville.
Hey, Lauren.
It's Loring, Loring.
Okay.
And Victor, I have a call for your guest, please.
Yeah, go right ahead. You're talking.
Go ahead. We're here.
Okay. Now, I certainly agree with everything you're saying. However, of course, there is the question of how do we change minds on a mass scale? The antibodies are so strong to keep this duality consciousness going. Is this going to happen through grace, or is this going to happen through some mass effort? And I think I'd follow that up as, am I ever going to see this in my lifetime?
I believe you are. We believe that we're about to take an evolutionary leap in consciousness, that the Earth is actually moving into a higher frequency, and that it is basically God's big event. We're not religious, but we call it God's big event because it's something that the Earth has never been through, is this shift in consciousness. And if you put your attention on that, you'll see it everywhere. If you put your attention on the violence and all that stuff, that's all you'll see. And so in some ways it is grace. we are going to get it because it is our true nature. We are loving beings. It is a conscious, loving universe. There is a higher way of being that is actually beyond duality. We made up duality, right and wrong. What we're saying is there is only love, absolutely. And it is our true nature, so we're going to get it. You can get it in the shower, you can get it driving on the freeway, sitting in a traffic jam. You know, it is our true nature. We're just going to get it, and I think that's what one calls grace. Isn't it?
Well, that's certainly a great note of optimism.
Yeah, we are optimists, we have to confess.
Now, what do we do in the meantime?
In the meantime, I think we work on ourselves and monitor our thoughts and monitor where we're putting our attention and monitoring the degree to which we are trusting the universe, trusting ourselves, trusting circumstance, trusting reality. And by doing that, everything actually shifts. Even the identical circumstances, the same events, will be experienced from a different place, and we will not suffer the way we suffer when we're doing it from that, when we're encountering life from a lower vibratory, state.
So this is a whole construct that we're presenting. So we suggest get our book and study it, and because it's complex and it all fits together into a construct, a paradigm that allows one to trust one's own heart, to trust a loving universe, and move into that higher frequency. So really, you asked what you can do, and that is to understand that everything that happens in your life happens for you. Okay?
Well,
everything. So when you start
it doesn't
blaming...
happen to you, it happens for you. It's such a different take on reality.
So this is the work, okay?
That's well said. If I may say one thing, I'm working with a group now that's working on this whole thing, and it's not easy to get it. I mean, for all of us, to get out of the duality into a new way of perceiving reality is no small thing.
Exactly, but let me tell you, the key is your own subconscious, your own unconscious, to work and see that everything that comes in your life comes for you, to teach you what is sitting in your unconscious that you don't even know is there, that has you separate from your true self. So that's the work we each have to do, is clean up our own unconscious, our own subconscious, and our aura, and get into a high vibration so we can go with the earth, with this amazing shift.
Okay, thank you, Lauren.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. I'm reminded of a Frank Zappa song where he says, I will love everybody. I will love the police as they kick the crap out of me in the street.
Yep.
Yep.
Love thy enemy, whatever. It's
I
true.
think his take was a little more cynical than that. Okay. Good morning. You're in there.
Good morning. This is Jan the Man.
Hey, Jan the Man.
How are you?
How's the man today?
Great. I'm totally reading where you guys are coming from. I'm in total sync with where you're going with this, and I'm a believer. I just wanted to reaffirm where you're coming from. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Man, thanks a lot.
And the man.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we need that.
Good morning. You're in there.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Hey, I got an acronym. Is that what it's called? FAIR, false evidence appearing real.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You got it.
We know that one. What's your name?
Hi, it's Al from formerly of Somerville.
Hi, Al. And then there's another one. Trust. Truly rely upon spirit timing.
Wow, never heard that. That's wonderful.
That's a good
trust,
one.
Thank you. There's an elephant in the room. It begins with E, and it's ego. I haven't heard the separative ego talked about, so I'm going to say bye. I love you guys, and maybe you could talk about the A, annoying ego.
Well, we love the ego.
We can do that.
We love it. We think everyone needs to own their ego, own their true self, so their ego can come from their higher self.
So their false ego, what the Sufis call the nafs, goes away, and what you become is the actual beautiful, majestic blossom that you were designed to be on the tree of life.
Wow.
How about that?
Too.
Yep.
You guys are great. I'll look into you guys. And
The trust frequency, just Google it, you'll find us.
TheTrustFrequency.net is our website, and we'd love to hear from you. So send us an email on the contact.
I sure will. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. The number here is 617-552-4686. 617-552-4686, and we are discussing the trust frequency, the 10 assumptions for a new paradigm. Did we miss some assumptions to talk about?
Yeah, there's more. There's actually 10. I think we've mentioned about 4 or 5 of them. I do want to mention that those scientists listening into this show out there probably think of frequency in terms of hertz, megahertz, and what have you. It is that in a certain sense, it is measurable. An organization called the Institute of Heart Math can actually measure the difference in your vibratory rate depending on whether you're in a state of fear or whether you're in a state of trust or of love. But if there are any 60s people out there, you remember the difference between good vibrations and bad vibrations. You remember what it was like to be in love. You know that magical state. That's exactly what we're talking about. And you also remember what it feels like to be in fear and anxiety. That's the lower vibratory realm that we are talking about, just expanding and floating above into a higher state of consciousness. What's the 10th assumption?
The 10th assumption is the trust frequency is a real place.
This is not just namby-pamby, as one of the callers said a little while ago. It's actually a real place. It's actually the goal of every meditator, every Buddhist, every person on a spiritual path is heading for something that you could even call it heaven. You could call it heaven on earth. It's a state of consciousness.
Yeah, and that's our job as humanity, is to bring heaven to earth.
It's perfectly real.
Because we have to get into that frequency where the earth is experiencing a humanity that's actually operating according to the love in its heart. And we're gonna influence all of creation when we open our heart and release that love and come from that place.
In fact, we're already doing that. It's not we're going to. We are in the midst of doing exactly that.
Shifting there.
Yeah.
And nirvana, we talked with a Tibetan man, and we told him about the trust frequency, and he said, yes, it's one step below nirvana. And
one step below nirvana?
One step or a half a step or something.
He sounds biased.
But also the NDE people who...
near-death experiences, what they report when they come back from their experiences, we're finding it's the same thing as the trust frequency. So what we're saying is actually heaven is real. You can die and go to heaven or hell, so they say. You can have a near-death experience and go and die and go and have these extraordinary encounters and come back and tell the story. Or third option, you don't have to die to get to heaven. We call that the trust frequency, and that's the work we do. We're working on showing just regular folks how to get into a state of being that is, it's heaven. There's no difference.
So you asked Victor about our current project.
Yeah, so on to our current project.
Yeah, and it's very much involved with this trust frequency concepts because the Mayflower Pilgrims lived according to a trust-based paradigm, a providence-based paradigm. The founders of America, it was a providence. We turn it over to divine providence. They knew there was something higher, some place to go if we acted accordingly. And the Native Americans have a trust-based paradigm that's connected to all that is. And so we're bringing that all together into finding the source of this vision that coalesced here in New England, right here, and coalesced into something that humanity has yet to achieve. And that's our challenge to humanity now is, okay, all the ancestors have gone before us. They've had these visions from all races, all time, and what are we doing with it? They died for it. They had the vision, and what are we going to do with it now? And that's what's up for us.
And have you explained what the current project is, or what it's called?
The current project is the first 50 years, Freedom and Friendship at Plymouth Plantation. And we are actually launching a new Indiegogo campaign, crowdfunding campaign very soon to help us, fund us, because we're doing a documentary film, a screenplay, and a book on the subject, because there's so much misunderstanding and misbelief around this first 50 years. It's astounding what's going on out there. If you Google the real Thanksgiving at Thanksgiving time, the pendulum has swung from leaving out the Native Americans and only bringing them into that story around the Thanksgiving feast in Squanto. They just got totally left out of the whole thing, and the key role that they have played in the evolution of democracy and the American mind and spirit. It's just a crime that they've never been acknowledged, and now the pendulum is swung to the other side, where there's a demonization of the Mayflower Pilgrims, and in an effort to honor the Indian, but there's a high road to take out of this mess, because there's so much misinformation out there that has really brought this origin story into such confusion that nobody knows what to believe anymore. And it's really a magnificent time, and it's the beginning of America, and not the beginning of America, the beginning of the United
what
States.
Became the United States.
Because America existed long before the Mayflower Pilgrims. But these were extraordinary people, different from the Puritan, and they lived in peace and harmony with the Native American for 50 years.
For half a century. It fell apart later. And that gem at the founding of this country has been kind of covered over with a lot of misinformation, like really poisonous misinformation. It's amazing. We've been researching this. I've been researching this personally for over 10 years now. And I know quite a lot about the background and the entire situation and the actual history as far as it can be determined 400 years later. And I'll ask individuals I meet what their understanding is of that time. And I have yet to encounter anybody who comes back at me with actually what happened. They come back with the most bizarre misconceptions.
So how can we absolutely know what happened those many years ago?
Yeah, good question. The best information we have, thank you, that was a very good question. We have actually a lot of information because Europeans write things down, whereas indigenous people don't, and they depend on oral history. So when you're dealing with oral history, you don't have dates. We are finding that there's an awfully mixed up history that is presented from the oral history side of things. It simply is not accurate with regard to the written records we have. Now, we have to understand that somebody writing something may not understand what they're seeing. They may have a bias, but it's all we have. So we actually have, from Jesuit priests who are writing about their encounters to sailors who are actually educated men who are writing, to the Mayflower Pilgrims themselves. The first great book of American literature is called Of Plymouth Plantation, written by William Bradford, governor of Plymouth Colony. And we have to trust that he is he may have a certain sort of whatever Christian bias, but he writes with honesty and clarity. And there was another Mayflower Pilgrim, Edward Winslow, who also was exceedingly interested in the Native Americans and went and met them, spent time with them, had cosmological conversations with them about their belief system, and reported. So we have those kinds of reports, and we have a lot of them.
And it's not, people say, history was written by the victors. This is not about victors. This is about people, what they experienced at the time.
Yeah, there was no victor or victim certainly at that point in time.
So it's personal accounts of experiences. And what we've discovered because of our 30-year involvement with Native Americans is that we have discovered that the Mayflower Pilgrim and the Native Americans actually were spiritually aligned, a providence-based paradigm and a trust-based paradigm. The Indians have a trust-based paradigm. The Pilgrims and the founders of the United States had a providence-based paradigm. It's belief in a higher power, a benevolent higher power. And there's actually source material that shows that the Indian actually agreed that what the Pilgrim called God, they called Khitan. Okay, so this is what's unknown is this spiritual alignment, and this is a precursor or a vision of what we can become. It's a very inspiring story, and it comes from coming together with the Native American. They're carrying key pieces that are missing in the paradigm. That's what our book is about. It's bringing indigenous cosmology and quantum science together because we're operating on a flawed paradigm, and the Native American cosmology brings those key missing pieces to the paradigm. And so we just need to get on the high road to seeing something that happened at the founding of this country that can inspire us into that vision that this country promised it would be.
All right, not to be negative, but once again, okay, we had that connection, and it was lost. So
now what?
And why was
question.
it lost? It was lost because people were operating on what I call the flawed operating system, the assumptions they were basing their realities on.
It became material.
So they had a moment there. They had a kind of a moment almost of paradise, a heavenly time. There was where two groups met, signed a treaty essentially, and honored that treaty for half a century. You know, that's not common throughout human history. So that's what we're doing, is just looking at that heart, that gem at the founding of this country, despite the fact that it all fell apart later. It fell apart when the Indians declared war and almost exterminated the white people in New England at the time. It was a very, very touchy, dangerous, difficult time. It was scary as hell.
It's been a process, Victor. We are in process. Humanity is in process. And we have to, now we're here. We just can't sit back and say, oh, darn it, humanity's just going down the tubes. Okay? It's us. Our ancestors were here for us to act and do something. They set the stage, and this is a very Native American way of knowing that the ancestors are right here cheering us on. They lived and died for a purpose, for a reason, and it's up to us right now to take a hold of our own thinking and get on with opening our hearts and walking in balance.
Okay, we have a caller in line. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Victor and friends. This is Haskell.
Hey, I was hoping you'd call, Haskell.
Yeah, hey, Haskell, I remember you last time.
I had to really support you. You guys are doing such wonderful, important stuff, and people who sure were upset, and we empathize with the tragedies and genocide of the world, but people don't realize that we are just doing the same thing that they're doing, in Gaza. On one side saying, well, you hate me, and therefore I have to hate you. You kill me, I have to kill you. And by perpetuating that, you're just adding more hate and discontent. And it's very difficult from a human, on this conscious level to say, well, I can see the higher picture, but what you're saying is that we do have to see that, and we have to realize that you can't be spreading more hate and discontent by hating the people who are doing these things that we're so aghast at. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's a brilliant point.
That's right.
Thank you for that, Haskell.
It's like Gandhi says, an eye for an eye makes everyone blind.
There you
go. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if we just put our attention on what we can be, not what we have been, and just know that we are loving beings and that we're just out of balance because we're operating on a flawed operating system.
Our assumptions.
Our
fear-based assumptions that result in everything from greed to war to even to separate nations.
And the media, the newspapers, and the televisions, and the news, talk about perpetuating the fear base.
So tear them up and shut them off.
Yeah.
That's
don't
what
even
we
listen
do.
To democracy now.
We do our best to avoid all of that. Sorry, folks, but we do. We just do not.
They bombard us with everything from rapes, fires, all the terrorists.
And it's a brilliant way to keep
genocide.
It's a brilliant way to keep the country's vibratory state down. And
but it is our personal choice.
But it's our choice to either go there with them or not. And we know it sells advertising and it sells newspapers, but you know what? That does not interest me. I'm interested in the human potential of, as Connie said, what we can be.
And the interesting thing is people do want to empathize with all the, people in tragic situations around the world, and what we need to know is that the way to do that is not to hate what's going on there, but to send love vibrations there, and to have love within our own life, and spread it around in our own little sphere of influence, and literally meditate on it and send it over there. But it's got to be the love vibration, not the hate of the people.
That's right, Haskell.
Beautiful.
There are scientific experiments that are being done by organizations like the Institute of Noetic Sciences, where they had 4,000 people meditating one July in Washington, D.C., just sending that place their love, and the crime rate went down precipitously. It worked. They documented it. I mean, it could have been coincidence, but it's very, very unlikely. And we have an opportunity coming up. We're 6 years away from the year 2020. And the Mayflower landed in 1620, and there's a core wound at the heart of this country based on misunderstanding of what happened then. There was actually a beautiful, peaceful time between the Mayflower people and the Indians they met that has been so contaminated by misbelief, it's amazing. If you go online and just Google the truth about Thanksgiving and see what's being said, and then if you know anything about the history and you see how utterly incorrect that information is, but it's what people believe.
And the interesting thing is, Haskell, that the Mayflower Pilgrims wanted exactly what the Native American wants today. The Mayflower Pilgrims put their lives on the line, mothers, fathers, and children, to stand up against absolute monarchy. They took a huge step for humanity into self-determination and operating according to conscience. This is the essence of the Native way. Okay, so these guys came and did that. They broke from the European mindset. They came here. They lived in this relationship with the Native Americans for 50 years, and gave birth to this amazing thing, the synthesis of the two of them, this American mind and American spirit. So it's just so much potential that we haven't realized yet, and no humanity has. I mean, we were all doing really crummy things to each other, and still are. It's not a race thing. It's not a skin color thing. So we just need to get on into the light and acknowledge our shadow. Every race has to acknowledge its shadow. The white race's shadow has been put in their face by Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky and all that. So that's good. That's all good, because we've got to recognize our shadow. The Native American has to recognize their shadow for what they were doing long before we got here, as far as how they were interacting with each other. And we just all have to acknowledge our shadow and move into our light. And until we do that, we're prisoners.
Amen. Well, it's great that you're bringing all this, to our attention, and hopefully people can take another fresh look at what happened 400 years ago. But I guess, are there going to be big celebrations, I guess, on the...
Yes, there's going to be a huge event in the year 2020. Thanksgiving 2020 is going to be huge, and it's going to be controversial, because there's a lot of anger leveled at the Pilgrims and the descendants of the Pilgrims for things they did not do, for crimes they did not commit. So that's going to be controversial.
It's interesting. I remember back in 1992 when everybody was getting ready for the 500 years of Columbus.
Right.
And then within the 5 years before that, all of a sudden, all the kind of things that he did that were on the negative side came out, and all the celebrations were either canceled or modified because people thought, well, Columbus wasn't such a nice guy. He did bad things to the natives. And so it'll be interesting if, as we approach this 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims, that a whole bunch of new information comes out and we kind of think about how a different perspective on them as well.
Yeah, the fact is they were impeccable. The Pilgrims themselves and the Indians that they signed that treaty with, they behaved toward one another impeccably.
As long as the original leaders were alive.
Yeah,
okay,
the
William
next
Bradford and
generation didn't feel the
Massasoit.
same way.
Okay, and what we're saying is that a visionary leader can take their people to a high level. Okay, and this is a prime example. They had a vision. They did it. But the next generation didn't have it, and the next generation, it all went away, that high vision. But we had to do this. We had to go through this process. All of humanity had to go through this feeling of separation, of scarcity. All this stuff we're doing, it all serves, to me and to us, the coming of peace on earth and heaven on earth.
Right.
But we have to choose it.
When you talk about free will, I think I mean, there may be free will, I think, at a higher level, but on a conscious level, we're just like robots, and I don't know that, if you're not tuned into that higher consciousness, on your lower consciousness, the free will thing is like, you see the robots, hey, okay, you hate me, I hate you, so it's like people do, the free will level is not expressed at the lower levels, only at the higher levels.
Well, you need to install the trust frequency operating system in the robot, at which point it's going to become a love machine.
Well, that'll be, I can't wait. That's going to be fantastic.
Okay, Haskell, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, you're on there. Hello, it's your turn. I think someone's in the shower there.
Oh, yeah.
I want to remind folks to keep it ringing. I'll push that button when it's your turn. Good morning, you're on the air.
Very good show today.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. I would like to make one point about emotions. It's my understanding that any emotion expressed in the moment is a positive emotion, and any emotion, including love, that isn't expressed in the moment is negative, with all the meanings that those words have. I'd like to just say to everybody out there that, just stay with it, that it is happening. That's my opinion. And there's one nice way that things work in this phenomenon of holism, which is the stages of being, the qualities of being in a state are also the steps of getting there. So, in a sense, it takes us out of time-space, even when we're in regular consciousness, which is to say, act as if, it's what sort of a paraphrase of that religious thing, act as if you are, and stay in process. Rather than, because we are creating a very new thing. We're not creating something that we remembered that we had before, although that's also helping us. So we're creating this as we go every day.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And you can't use cliches or common, familiar knowledge to look for it.
Right. Absolutely.
So keep up the good work and trust.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You know what they say about trust, that if you trust yourself, that alone can be all the technique that you need. Now, not everyone is that good at that, but that alone can be enough.
And we say trust the loving universe. And we're giving tools for people so they can trust themselves and can trust the loving universe.
You are tuned to 90.3 WZBC in Newton, expanding awareness here. And my guests for this program are Andrew Cameron Bailey and Connie Baxter Marlow, author of The Trust Frequency. Good morning, you're on the air. Hello, you is on the air.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody has to turn down the radio.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh.
This is Dottie calling back. And,
hey, Dottie calling back.
Yes, and been listening intently, and I basically understand and how to put it. I support most of what your presenters here are saying, and just a couple of things that I wanted to one bit of clarification. I may have misheard what was said with the gentleman was saying something about 50, the first 50 years, which is good to hear. The things were with the pilgrims and all that. I'm willing to entertain the possibility of that being the truth. But I believe that the statement was made. What broke that, what ended it, was that the indigenous people attacked and slaughtered the pilgrims. And did I mishear that, or is that actually what?
No, that is in fact sadly what did happen. The son of Massasoit, the one who signed the original treaty back in 1621, the son who was known as King Philip, actually did amass a lot of weapons and decide to take out the settlers.
And the settlers were sort of blameless in this. He just out of the...
Well, to be honest, if I was sitting here as a Native American and a whole bunch of people came over the ocean and started settling on my land, I might well... I know. No, I'm with you.
He resorted to violence. So that was just the beginning of the violent. Before that, there had been a relationship that had been going on, and he just felt that it was not what he wanted, and he amassed weapons, and other tribes. Not all tribes joined him because there was a real relationship. It was really a family feud, ultimately, King Philip's War. I mean, what we have to understand is the dynamics of the human heart and human spirit, and what was going on there. So many tribes joined with the Pilgrims or would not join King Philip, and so it just had disintegrated. So, but there wasn't violence. Before that time, there was no violence.
Even the violence of stealing, because I had understood the Pilgrims had stolen, food and as long as land. That's not.
Well, they came in and they did a couple of things that I would not have advised them to do. They did take corn at their very first time they came on land. They found buried stores of corn and they took it, and they shouldn't have.
But they said at the time, we will pay for it, and they ultimately did.
And they did. They found who it belonged to, and they recompensed them. But still, that was actually a bad move. That's not how you befriend people when you show up on their doorstep.
Absolutely.
They were not perfect. But once the two parties signed their agreement, they behaved toward one another impeccably. You cannot find anything bad that they did to each other until the next generation.
And they did have the transfer of land was done through deeds. Okay, very meticulously done through deeds, and King Philip actually, and Alexander, his older brother, Wamsutta, they were actually selling land to others, and that's why they were brought into court in Plymouth, because they were selling land outside of the jurisdiction of the.
But that's a whole
other thing. Yeah. But anyway, just it wasn't. This whole land thing is a very big
Dottie,
deal.
It's a very complex story. I've been researching it. I've become quite a historian on this subject, and what people believe, on the whole, is simply so far from being true. There's little bits of truth that are scattered around and among, but it's so misunderstood. Okay, so thank you.
Okay, thanks. And can I say one other reference that when you're talking about the ancestors, it's very moving. And I'm sure you're familiar with Joanna Macy and her work.
Somewhat.
She's a Buddhist practitioner, scholar. Anyway, she has some incredible, how do I put it? She does a lot of workshops on grief and how to deal with the coming, kind of collapse of, what's happening on the planet and the, Mother Earth and what we've done, and all that. But going into our own, in order to deal with that sort of on the emotional, dealing with the despair and all that, because obviously, as you say, pushing things under, if they're there, doesn't work. But to go to acknowledging if there's despair or fear or whatever the negative,
absolutely,
as well as positive. Anyway, some of the imagery that she uses is she does vision, what do you call it,
vision
affirmations,
quest.
And there's another word for it, but basically just visualization.
Yeah, I'm aware of her, but honestly I don't know her work, so thanks, that's a good reminder. I'll check in on Joanna Macy.
Yeah, and a reference is if you go to dharmaseed.org, which has you can stream a lot of Buddhist talks by various Buddhists, and she did some workshops at, I think, Spirit Rock, which is a Buddhist center in California, and you can stream it, and it is so moving. And she has these, does these images of the ancestors down through history and connecting to their energy. And it's very moving.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your work.
Okay, Dottie.
Bye, Dottie.
Call the show anytime.
All right.
Okay, if people dial up the trustfrequency.net, what do they see?
Well, they see our 10 assumptions. They see information about the book. They see information about our film, In Search of the Future.
They get some background on us personally. They can purchase our products,
but our
films and books.
Our film, In Search of the Future, we actually gift it with our book. If people order our book from the website, they get a copy of our film In Search of the Future, What Do the Wise Ones Know? And that is with indigenous elders from Africa, the U.S., and Mexico that we've known for 20 to 40 years, and various other folks that we've known on the origin and future of humanity. So our work over the past 20 years has been to bring the indigenous way of knowing to the table, because we are missing important information about the nature of the universe. That's why we're out of balance, and that's how we're going to come forward and understand that we actually live in a conscious, loving universe, and that it all has spirit, it's all sacred, and we're all connected, and that's the essence of the native knowing.
It's all alive and it loves us.
Now, I know you can't speak for all natives, certainly, but do some natives resent white guys and girls joining their ceremonies and performing various rituals that are specific to natives?
We're not talking about rituals
And,
here.
you know, we only go to ones. I mean, we attend powwows. We've done a lot of sweat lodges and so on. We only go where we're invited, where we're welcome.
But,
so I don't know. There may well be that. I can understand that if they want their privacy and hold their traditions.
But this is not about ceremony. This is not about ritual. That is theirs. They can have that. That's all theirs. But what is universal in all of us is our interconnectedness with all that is, and that's the essence of the cosmology of the native people. So we're talking cosmology. We're talking, how does the universe work? Okay, it has nothing to do with skin color, race, anything.
Or even ceremony.
Ceremony, because you can take acid and you can get that connection to it. It doesn't belong to the Native Americans.
It belongs to humanity. What we're really doing, Victor, is kind of distilling human wisdom, looking for every source. It comes from Buddhism, it comes from Christianity, it comes from, for me personally, the Kalahari Bushmen, the people who carry the world's oldest DNA in Africa. We've spent time with them. It comes from the Australian Aborigines. It comes from science. It comes from little children. It comes from my granddaughter looking at me and opening her mouth up and saying something amazing.
And Albert Einstein, we do work with Albert Einstein and Henry David Thoreau on their mystical natures. Okay, we all have a connection to all that is, and Albert Einstein and Henry David Thoreau came from that place and changed the world. Everyone who's changed the world has come from that place in themselves. They haven't gone away and gone into a cave and drunk water and eaten bread, and they've stepped up and changed the world. And so we bring that to the table. We present at the Thoreau Society a piece that's called Thoreau and Einstein, Two Mystics Who Changed the World, and showing the parallels in their lives. Einstein had never heard of Henry David Thoreau, but the astounding parallels in their lives and how they saw education, war, government, racism, how they saw that. We bring that out in these presentations. It's actually a performance piece. Andrew actually plays Albert Einstein. But that mystical aspect of us is universal.
Okay, we have to go now and leave it there. All right, if you want to talk to Andrew or Connie off the air, give them a call at the other number, 617-552-4686. 617, I'm sorry, it's 552-3511. 617-552-3511. And if you get a recording, hang up. That means the line is engaged. They're talking to someone else. And dial it up again. 617-552-3511. Thank you very much for expanding our awareness regarding the trust frequency.
Thank you for having us. It's been really good.
Go to the trustfrequency.net.
Yeah,
trustfrequency.net.
And
remember, trust the loving universe. That's the 4-word instruction manual.
All right. Thank you very much once again for being on the program. And you are tuned to 90.3 WZBC Newton. And join me for my summer job Tuesday, beginning at 7, running till noon, for what I call the clairvoyant turntable show, music from different genres, different eras, and also from on Tuesday from 11 to 12, I'll be presenting Sounds of Dissent, music, topical music from various decades and various styles as well. And that'll do it for me. Enjoy your dreams, folks, and join me again next week.